Welcome to Life with David. I'm David, and today I'm joined by a couple of guest speakers. Yep, that's right, I'm going to work on my son's vintage RadioShack Nova 7B speakers. In the 1970s and 80s, RadioShack actually had some pretty decent speakers for the money. No, they weren't Fishers or Pioneers, but they were pretty good. With the resurgence of vinyl, vintage speaker systems are also being rediscovered. My son has been using these speakers for a while, but now he would like to bring them back to their original performance. They look to be in pretty good shape, but I don't know how they'll perform. I'll prepare a series of short videos where we measure the existing performance of these speakers, make any repairs or modifications that are needed, and then test the speakers afterwards to see how we did. Along the way, we'll learn a little about how speaker systems work. So why don't you join me as we dive into these RadioShack speakers? I'd like to spend a moment on safety. There's nothing more important than keeping you and your loved ones safe. Be sure to read, understand, and follow the safety rules for your tools. Using your tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And always use the appropriate eye, hearing, and respiratory personal protective equipment. In this video, the main concern is audio. Watch for excessive volume. If you let it get away from you, some of the tests could cause hearing discomfort and possible hearing damage. Now let's get started. Just a note, pun intended, that there are very few things that spark more controversy than audio. Audiophiles are an opinionated bunch. I'm sure I'll get all kinds of comments about what I do here. But music is so personal, and our hearing is so subjective that differing opinions run rampant. I'm not extolling the virtues of any one system, but rather I'm trying to bring these speakers back to their original performance. Audio is a series of signal conversions. In the days of analog vinyl, acoustic music sound waves were converted to electrical signals with microphones. Those electrical signals were converted to magnetic signals, which were captured on magnetic recording tape. After editing, which usually involved at least several conversions back and forth onto magnetic tape, electrical signals were converted to magnetic signals that were converted into motion that drove a stylus to cut a master record disc. Vinyl records were copied from this disc. After we purchased our music, does anyone remember the Columbia Record Club? We put this record on our turntable where the motion of the stylus was converted to electrical signals. These electrical signals were amplified and modified and then sent to the speakers. The speakers converted the electrical signals into motion, which were then converted into sound waves with the speaker cones and speaker enclosures. After the sound waves were modified by the room acoustics, they reached our ears. Our eardrums converted the sound waves into motion, which then was used to stimulate the tiny hairs in our inner ears, converting the signal to nerve impulses. Wow, that's a lot of work just to listen to the Beatles. Sound is incredibly complex. The human ear can detect sounds of a mosquito flying 3 feet away to jet engines from 30 feet away. However, humans cannot detect all frequencies equally. The sweet spot is between 3,000 and 4,000 Hertz. If you want to learn more about sound and acoustics, there are lots of good articles on Google to get you started. Sound and recording engineers study and practice for years to perfect the nuances of good audio, so there's no way to convey all that information in a few minutes. Here we'll just scratch the surface enough to meet our goal of restoring the performance of these speakers. To get the most lifelike sound, system designers strive to make the frequency response as flat as possible. That means they attempt to make the sound pressure levels equal for all frequencies. Achieving a flat frequency response is difficult for a single speaker driver. For equal sound pressure, air must be moved either a long distance at low frequencies or a short distance at high frequencies. A woofer is a speaker driver that excels at moving lots of air at low frequencies. A tweeter can move a small amount of air at high frequencies. A mid-range driver handles the in-between frequencies. To achieve a flat frequency response, quality audio speakers include at least a woofer and a tweeter, and many also include a mid-range driver. An electrical circuit inside the speaker called a crossover is used to match all the drivers so that they produce a fairly consistent sound pressure regardless of the frequency. For instance, a two-way speaker which has a woofer and a tweeter has a high and low pass filter in its crossover network. A three-way speaker, which includes a woofer, tweeter, and also a mid-range, includes low pass, notch pass, and high pass filters in its crossover design. Crossover networks are made of capacitors and inductors. Age is not a friend to the electrolytic capacitors that were used in speakers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Their value can change significantly, and they can even short out or open up. In fact, non-polarized electrolytic capacitors can get lopsided where the capacitance for positive voltages is different than for negative voltages. All this changes the frequency breakpoints in the filters that make up the crossover design. This results in some frequencies having more emphasis than designed, and some having less. I don't know the original frequency response for these Nova 7B speakers, but I can replace the capacitors in the crossover network with new ones. I'll measure the before and after frequency response to see if I made any difference in its performance. To measure the existing frequency response, I'll use a program called Room Equalization Wizard. This is a useful suite of audio generation, measurement, and analysis tools. The program is free, but donations are recommended, and the program is well worth it. For my test, the computer sound card will output a frequency sweep from 0 to 5,000 Hz in a little over 5 seconds. At the same time, the microphone will record the sound coming from the speaker and record the sound pressure. Since I don't have a calibrated microphone, I will only look at the differences in the before and after responses while using the same equipment in the same location. To see if this process works, I will first measure the frequency response of a set of homemade speakers I built almost 50 years ago. They work okay, but I know the bass response is pretty weak. Then I will measure the radioshack speakers. Everything will be the same except for the speakers. If the frequency response curves are different, then I can assume the program can detect differences in speaker performance. First, I run the frequency response tests for the homemade speaker. As you can see, the bass response is less than average. Next is the radioshack speaker. There's more bass and the frequency response curve looks different. This is what I was hoping for. Now I will run a series of tests on the radioshack speaker. First, I'll take a distance reading from 36 inches away, and then close readings for the woofer and tweeter. I'll use the average of 3 runs for each reading. With this information saved, I'm ready for the next step in restoration of these speakers. Thanks for joining me today. I'm pleased I was able to characterize the current radioshack Nova 7B frequency response. In my next video, I'll dive into the internals of the speaker and crossover. I hope I can make a positive difference in the sound of these speakers. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. And leave a comment or suggestion for things to do. I hope to do more of these videos, so please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications of new videos. Let's get together next time for another day in Life with David. See you soon!